Let me ask you one more time. Are you really not going back to your husband, Ron? I've told you over and over. My legs aren't what they used to be. Alice, my mother-in-law, repeats the same excuse again, her voice tinged with a familiar whine. I let out a deep sigh and respond firmly. Then I will leave the house. What? Matthew, my husband, jumps up in shock, his face pale and tense. Ignoring him, I turn my back to him and start to walk away. Wait, please. Alice also tries to stop me, her voice rising in panic, but I don't say anything more and just left the room, closing the door behind me. I know there's no point in arguing further. It's just going to be more meaningless excuses. Well, if that's the case, then I have my own plans. It's not like I've been standing idle by, doing nothing all this time. I've been preparing, carefully crafting various plans for a day like this. Whatever happens next, it's no longer my problem. If the relationship between my parents-in-law crumbles, then so be it. Alice seems determined not to go back to Ron, and I think that Ron would actually be happier if things ended this way. Of course, I won't forgive Matthew for defending a woman like Alice either. The two of them can fall as far as they want, for all I care. With that thought, I rush back to my room, feeling my resolve solidify with each step. My name is Sophia. I got married to Matthew when I was 36, and he was 5 years younger than me. 5 years have passed since then. We don't have any children, but our relationship as a couple is not bad. However, there is one problem, a significant one, and that is Alice. Ever since we got married, it seemed like Alice couldn't stand me. Maybe it's because I'm older than Matthew. Recently, she's even been coming to our house, constantly badgering me with questions like, "When are you going to have kids?" Or "You better not slack off on your housework." Maybe I've reached my limit. When we got married, I made a vow to myself not to go against my parents-in-law, but now I think my patience is running thin. To be honest, I had a bad feeling about Alice from the very beginning. The first time I met Alice face to face was when Matthew brought me over to his parents' house for a family meeting. Matthew had already told his parents about our relationship and showed them some photos of us together. He also talked about my background, how my family owned a small inn, and that I intended to keep working after our marriage. Alice seemed displeased about the fact that I planned to work. Maybe she thought she could stay at the inn for free. Either way, I don't think I left a bad impression. But apparently, Matthew hadn't told them that I was 5 years older than him. Does it really matter if you're older than me? Matthew would often say things like that with a calm expression, but I was anxious. Sure, a lot of people don't care about age differences in relationships, but plenty of others do, especially if the woman is older. It can be a big deal for some families, and Alice, unfortunately, was one of those people. I realized that the moment I greeted her. "Hello, I'm Sophia. I'm dating Matthew." Yes, I've heard all about you." "You're a nurse, right?" Alice asked with a wide smile, trying to sound friendly. I awkwardly smiled back and nodded. "Yes, I work as a nurse at a municipal hospital. I've been so focused on my job that I haven't had time to marry until now." "Oh really? You look so young." "I do get that a lot. I have a pretty youthful face." So without much thought, I told her my age. "Well, people say I look younger than I am, but I'm actually 36. "What, 36? That makes you older than Matthew." Alice's expression darkened immediately. Panicking, I tried to smooth things over. "Yes, I'm a bit older, but Matthew is very supportive and helps me a lot." I rambled on, but Alice's face remained stern, unamused. From that moment, her smile vanished and didn't return. In contrast, Ron, my father-in-law, didn't seem to mind the age gap at all and continued talking with a big smile. "Matthew is quite immature, so it's probably a good thing that you're older, Sophia." "Well, yeah, I guess so." Matthew laughed sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. To be honest, Matthew is pretty childish. His hobbies are gaming and comics. Even now, whenever he gets his paycheck, He buys a mountain of comic books and brings them home. Even though Matthew spends his money on comic books, it's all within his allowance. So I don't complain. Everyone has their own hobbies, after all, and I've decided to accept his. Well, it's good that you two are happy together. Make sure you stay that way. And with that, Ron gave his approval for our marriage. Alice, on the other hand, was clearly displeased. Even after our marriage was set, every time Alice saw me, she would find something to complain about. It's not right for the woman to be older. I'm sorry, but I can't change that. And you're a nurse, always busy with work. Won't that mean you'll neglect your housework? Alice's eyes bore into me, sharp and unforgiving. I lowered my gaze slightly and answered, I'll try my best to manage everything. I was hoping that my young son's wife would come and help me with my bad legs. Alice sighed dramatically, rubbing her leg as if to emphasize her point. I quietly averted my eyes. I'd heard about Alice's bad legs from Ron when we first met. In fact, Ron had gone as far as to ask if I could move in with them and help Alice out, but I had refused. If I lived at my in-laws' house, it would be like giving Alice free rein to bully me. Once you start living with your in-laws, it's difficult to leave. So to avoid that trap, I turned down the idea of moving in from the very start. Alice's legs are in bad shape, so having a nurse like you, Sophia, around would put us all at ease. I'm sorry, my work hours are irregular, and I wouldn't want to disturb you. No, I should be the one apologizing for asking too much. Don't worry, just take care of each other, you and Matthew. And so I managed to avoid living with Alice. For now. After that, Matthew and I got married. We chose a new home, a condo on a hill. There were many reasons why we picked that place, but I explained it to Matthew like this. The rent is pretty reasonable, and the view from the window is fantastic. Yay, you're right. Let's go with it. Matthew decided in an instant, his excitement showing on his face. Of course, I had my own hidden agenda behind that smile of mine. What I told Matthew was true. The rent was relatively cheap for the area, and the view really was great. But there was one thing I didn't tell him. The area had limited public transportation options. That's one of the reasons the rent was affordable. The nearest bus stop was less than a 10-minute walk away, but you had to walk down a steep hill. It's easy to leave the house, but coming back means climbing the steep hill, often while carrying bags or groceries. Living in this place without a car would definitely be challenging. That's where our condo was located, on a hill that felt endless when you had to go up. Matthew and I both have our driver's licenses, so getting around wasn't an issue for us. But it was a different story for Alice, who doesn't drive at all. To visit us, she'd have to rely on public transportation, a bus, or a taxi. With her bad legs, there's no way Alice could manage walking up that steep hill. So, if she ever wanted to come to our condo, she'd essentially have to take a taxi directly to our door. Considering the distance from my in-laws' house, the taxi fare wouldn't be cheap either. Honestly, it didn't seem like she'd be able to visit us very often, and that was precisely why I chose this place as our new home. But once our married life began, my plans fell apart completely. For some reason, Alice started coming over frequently. And not just that, she would often show up unannounced and begin criticizing everything. That day was no different. As I was busy catching up on housework, Alice dropped by. Still haven't cleaned up, I see. Matthew's comic books were scattered all over the sofa. Alice grimaced at the sight and pushed them to one side. I'm sorry. It's been a hectic week, so I thought I'd do all the cleaning today. Oh, yes. No need for excuses. With that, Alice unceremoniously sat down on the sofa as if she owned the place. Then she turned to look at me and said, Well, go get me something to drink. Yes, of course. I hurried to make some coffee for her. I also brought out some high-end chocolates that Matthew and I were saving to enjoy together. Oh, these. They look quite expensive, don't they? Yes, well, I got them to enjoy with Matthew. Such luxury for my son's wife. When I first got married, Alice's rant begins. and I brace myself, forcing a polite smile. Well, I'll be heading home now, she says, standing up. Oh, yes, of course. I say it with relief, feeling a bit lighter inside knowing she'll be leaving soon. But then, she holds out her hand toward me. Well, hand it over. What do you mean? My taxi fare. What, are you planning to make me walk back on my bad legs? Oh, right, of course. I quickly open my wallet, trying not to show my irritation. And in that moment, Alice swiftly grabs a handful of bills. This should do, thanks. With that, she leaves, not even looking back, while I stand there, dumbfounded and irritated. After she's finally gone, my anger still simmers. I'll complain all I want now that she can't hear me, I think to myself. Storming over to the window, I look down and see Alice walking away. You've got to be kidding me, showing up unannounced and then demanding taxi money. It was right at that moment when I noticed something strange. Alice wasn't getting into a taxi. She was just walking normally. What? She's not taking a taxi. I rushed out of the room, my heart racing with suspicion. Hurriedly, I ran after Alice, trying to catch up with her. It took a few minutes, but eventually, I spotted her. There she was, standing at the bus stop. I watched from a distance, making sure not to be seen. Soon, a bus arrived, and Alice got on board, riding away. Taxi fare, my foot. She's taking the bus. Mumbling that to myself, the realization hit me. Taking the bus would normally be fine. But for someone who claims to have bad legs, that's odd. Could it be? Was she lying about her legs? From that day forward, I started keeping a close eye on Alice, especially when she came over to our place. I made sure to observe her carefully, and it didn't take long for the truth to come out. Every time Alice visited, she walked perfectly fine. Even when we went to the department store together or ran errands, she moved around without any issue. Alice walked with the energy and agility of someone far younger, showing no signs of any leg trouble. So she's been lying all along about her bad legs. Finally, I knew for sure, but I didn't say a word to Ron or Matthew. I decided to wait for the right time to make my move. For now, I would act like I didn't know a thing. After all, biding my time for the perfect revenge was worth it. And so our married life went on for 5 years. I knew one day I'd confront Alice and set things straight, and then I'd flip the whole situation around in my favor. It was around that time, as I was carefully planning how to make my move, that I got an invitation. Matthew's relatives were having a remembrance ceremony, and I was expected to attend. Of course, as Matthew's wife, I couldn't just sit around doing nothing. One task after another was thrown my way. Hey, Sophia, stop lazing around and come help with the food preparations. Yes, of course. I nodded, forcing a tight smile, and made my way to the kitchen. Inside, several women were already bustling around. Oh, Sophia, is it? One of the women spoke to me. She looked about my age, and from the way she spoke, it seemed she was also married to one of Matthew's relatives. Yes, that's right. Alice told me to come help out. You have it tough, don't you? Being married into that family. What do you mean? I asked, and the woman chuckled bitterly before explaining. According to her, Alice was quite notorious among the relatives for being strict, especially toward daughters-in-law. Behind the scenes, it was said that she could be harsh and quick to anger. I've been on the receiving end of her wrath myself. I bet she's hard on you, too, huh? Yeah, well, right. Knowing her, she's probably bad-mouthing you right now. Of course, I couldn't admit that I felt the same way. In the end, all I could do was give a forced, polite smile in response. After that, I started helping out with the preparations, doing my best to keep my mind off the situation. A little while later, when I went to open the living room door, I heard Alice's voice loudly coming from inside. Matthew's wife is just awful. She won't have kids. She's lazy with housework. And on top of that, she's so much older it's the worst. Alice laughed, her voice echoing in the room. But no one else joined in on her laughter. Anger boiling up inside me, I pushed the door open forcefully. Pretending like nothing was wrong, I walked in and started setting the food on the table. I glanced over and saw Matthew sitting right next to Alice. "Matthew, you didn't defend me at all." I continued arranging the dishes, with a scowl on my face. Then, out of nowhere, Alice tugged on my sleeve. "Well, speak of the devil. Here she is, Matthew's wife herself. We were just talking about you." Alice gave me a smug grin, clearly enjoying herself. Without looking at her, I greeted the others in the room. "Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia, Matthew's wife." "What kind of greeting is that? Show some more respect," Alice snapped. But just as she started to say more, Ron, sitting across from Matthew, leaned in and whispered in Alice's ear, "That's enough. I won't allow this to go on any further." "What? Are you siding with her now?" Alice pointed her finger directly at me. Ron, his face stern and irritated, quickly retorted, "It's not about taking sides. The fact is, Sophia has been doing a great job. Is that so?" Alice muttered, clearly unconvinced. "Yes, that's right. And for heaven's sake, close that mouth of yours." Ron's glare pierced through Alice, and she finally fell silent, albeit reluctantly. But that incident ended up being the tipping point. From then on, the relationship between my parents-in-law began to deteriorate rapidly. Eventually, Alice moved into our home, saying to Matthew, "I'll be staying here for a while, okay? Mom, you're always welcome here." Dad never understands me and just criticizes everything I do, Matthew replied, completely on board with the idea. "Well then, Sophia, I'll be counting on you." Of course, I didn't want Alice staying with us. That much was obvious. But I couldn't exactly refuse, could I? And so, Alice moved right in and made herself comfortable. Naturally, she didn't do any housework. The only thing Alice ever did was bark orders at me, and when she wasn't doing that, she was either complaining or helping herself to food and drinks. Honestly, it was infuriating. I couldn't stand her presence, and I wanted her out of the house as soon as possible. "Alice, since you're staying with us, would you mind helping out with some of the chores?" I asked, hoping for some cooperation. "Housework is your job." "What are you saying? Don't act so high and mighty," she snapped back. She didn't even pretend to listen. I was completely at a loss, struggling to keep my patience. That's how things went on for 2 weeks. Finally reaching my breaking point, I confronted her. "Alice, it's been 2 weeks already. Can't you make up with Ron?" If Alice apologized, I was sure Ron would forgive her. All I wanted was for her to apologize and go back to her own home. But when I suggested this, Alice didn't listen. Apparently, Ron had scolded Alice. She wasn't doing her part around the house, either. Before criticizing me, Ron told Alice to take care of her own housework, and it seemed that was exactly what she didn't want to hear. Alice was clearly frustrated by Ron's words. "Sophia, you don't have to come down so hard on Mom." Matthew chimed in, defending her as usual. And with fake tears in her eyes, Alice continued, "You don't understand me either, do you?" She insisted that because of her bad legs, she couldn't do much around the house. Yet Ron didn't understand that, apparently. "That's why I'm staying here. And I won't go back until he apologizes," she said, pouting like a child. I decided that this would be my last attempt to convince her. "One last time, are you really not going back to Ron?" I asked, hoping for a change of heart. "I've already told you many times. My legs are bad," Alice repeated, sticking to the same excuse as always. Letting out a deep sigh, I responded, "Then I will leave this house." "What?" Matthew shot up from his seat, startled. I ignored him and turned my back, resolute. "Wait," Alice called out, trying to stop me. But without a word, I walked away, leaving them both behind. I knew any further discussion would be pointless. They would only give me more worthless excuses. So I had my own plan in mind. It wasn't like I had been sitting idle by all this time. I had been carefully preparing for this moment, thinking about how I might eventually fight back. Whatever happens next, is no longer my concern. If my parents-in-law's relationship falls apart, so be it. Alice clearly has no intention of going back, and I think Ron might actually be happier that way. Of course, I won't forgive Matthew for defending someone like Alice. They can both fall as far as they want, for all I care. I quickly walked back to my room, determination burning inside me. I immediately began packing up my belongings. I shoved the essentials into a bag and stuffed everything else into cardboard boxes. Since I had prepared for this moment, organizing little by little, it didn't take long to finish. While I was packing, Matthew peeked into the room. When our eyes met, he spoke up. "Sophia, you're not serious, right?" "About what?" I replied, pretending not to know what he meant. For a brief moment, Matthew looked surprised, but he quickly composed himself and continued. "About leaving the house. Do you really think you can manage on your own?" "Of course I can. I'm not a child," I said firmly. "A nurse's salary isn't particularly high, but it's more than enough to live on my own. If anyone would struggle living alone, it would be Matthew. Before we got married, he used to handle all his own chores, but lately, he's relied entirely on me for cooking, laundry, and even cleaning his own room. I don't mind helping out as his wife, but all this time living comfortably is bound to catch up with him. And let's face it, his body isn't as young as it used to be. If he overdoes it on his days off, it will start affecting his work." When I laid all this out for him, Matthew's face immediately tightened. Biting his nails nervously, he spoke to me in a frantic, uneasy voice. Yay, I know that much." "Well, good luck with that," I said dismissively. "Wait, hold on. It's because of Mom, right? I'll convince her to go back. I'll make sure she never comes over again." Matthew started rambling excuses. He said he would send Alice away himself, that he'd make sure she wouldn't come back again. He said he would talk to Ron as well, pleading with me not to leave. Matthew went on and on like that, but none of it moved me in the slightest. Matthew had always taken Alice's side, and now, at the first sign of trouble, he was ready to cut her off. That kind of attitude only made me more furious. With a sigh, I spoke to Matthew. "Is that all you wanted to say?" "What do you mean? Is that all? What am I supposed to do?" Matthew's voice rose in frustration. I shook my head, feeling completely disheartened. "Listen, I'm not leaving just because of Alice." "What? Then what is it?" It was clear to me that Matthew didn't understand anything. I never thought he could be this clueless. "Then let me ask you, what about the remembrance ceremony the other day? Why did you just let Alice badmouth me to your relatives?" "Badmouth? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the time when Alice was openly saying horrible things about me to your family," I said sharply, raising my voice. Matthew seemed to think for a moment and then nodded slowly. "Oh, that. But that wasn't really badmouthing, right? I mean, come on. It's not like there are mother-in-laws who actually praise their son's wife," he said, laughing it off casually. His attitude infuriated me. "So that's how you see it? Well, I'm done. I'm definitely leaving," I said, slamming my bag down loudly. At that, Matthew's face showed genuine shock. "What's wrong with you? You're acting crazy." "No, you're the one who's out of line. If you can't understand how I feel, then so be it." I picked up my bag and stood up. Brushing past Matthew, I headed straight for the front door. "Hey, wait!" Matthew immediately chased after me, but I didn't stop. "I won't wait. Honestly, I want a divorce right now." "Divorce? You can't be serious." Matthew stood there, frozen in shock. I glanced back at him briefly and spoke in a low voice. "I'll send you the divorce papers later. Just sign them." "Divorce papers? This is a joke, right?" "It's not a joke. I'm going back to my parents' place. Let's talk on the phone from now on." And with that, leaving Matthew standing there in a daze, I ran out of the house. I quickly hopped on a bus headed toward my parents' home. Their house is in a rural town, far away. Good thing I requested time off from the hospital for something like this, I muttered to myself. I had requested a 2-week leave from work, not mentioning any family drama. I simply said I needed to help out at my family's inn. If my leave request has not been approved, I was even prepared to quit my job. Fortunately, my leave was approved. That allowed me to stand up to Alice with confidence. For now, I'll just head home. As I was planning my next steps, my phone started ringing. It was Matthew. Hello, Matthew. What is it? Sophia. Where are you right now? It had been about an hour since I'd left the house. I wondered what he had been doing all this time, but I answered him calmly. I'm on a bus to my parents' house. The bus hadn't started moving yet, but it was true that I was on it. A bus? Are you really going back home? Yes, like I said. Anyway, I don't want to disturb the people around me, so I'm going to hang up now. I was about to hang up the phone. Then I heard Matthew's voice, almost on the verge of tears. Please wait. I just want to talk. Can we just talk? Talk about what? You don't really mean it about the divorce, right? Hearing his question, I sighed deeply. Staring out the window, I answered in a steady voice. I do mean it. Come on, think it over one more time. No. And if you have any complaints, come say them to me in person. I'm hanging up now, goodbye. With that, I cut off the call abruptly. Then I turned off my smartphone completely. I wasn't sure what to do, but thanks for making this easy. I mumbled, stuffing the phone into my bag. A few minutes later, the bus left on schedule. After a few hours' ride, I arrived back at my parents' place and stayed at the family inn. And the next morning, I started helping out at the inn right away. Of course, as someone with no experience, the best I could do was help with cleaning. Sorry I can't be more useful. Returning to the office, I apologized to my brother Brian, who had taken over the inn from our parents. Don't worry, I wasn't expecting much from you anyway. So why'd you come back all of a sudden? Brian looked at me intently. I hesitated, unsure whether to tell him the truth. Actually, just as I was saying this, a loud voice came from the front desk. Bring that woman out here. I know she's here. It was Alice's voice. Before I could even react, Brian had already rushed out of the office. Ma'am, please calm down. You're causing disturbance. You're that woman's brother, aren't you? Alice shouted, and at that moment, Brian recognized her. He lowered his voice, speaking calmly. Are you looking for Sophia, by any chance? Yes. Bring that insolent woman to me. Alice slammed her hand on the reception counter. Brian tried to soothe her, keeping his tone polite. Please, you're disturbing the other guests. Could we continue this in the office? The office. Alice scowled in confusion. Standing next to her, Matthew began to try calming her down as well. Come on, Mom. You're causing a scene. But let's just go with him, okay? Matthew gently nudged Alice's back. Brian, with a tense smile on his face, led Alice and Matthew to the office. Soon after, Alice walked into the office. At that moment, our eyes met. I finally found you. Alice, what are you doing here? Because you said you were leaving the house. Alice started complaining loudly, her words sharp and incessant. I barely listened, letting her voice wash over me without much thought. Seeing our exchange, it seemed that Brian quickly pieced together the situation. After Alice finished her tirade, Brian served coffee to Alice and Matthew. Feeling a bit calmer now, he asked, you should be saying something too. She's your sister, after all. Alice pointed her finger at me accusingly. I brushed her hand away. What do you think you're doing? I should be asking you that. Did you come here just to cause trouble? I asked bluntly, making Alice snort in annoyance. After taking a sip of the coffee Brian had brought, Alice continued. I'm here to bring back the woman who abandoned her housework and left without permission. Are you talking about me? Of course I am. Who else? If you leave, who's going to take care of the house? If Alice did the housework, there would be no problem. After all, Alice is a housewife. To put it simply, she lives comfortably off of Ron's income. Yet she claims to have bad legs and hardly does any housework at all. Ron had even told me they hired a housekeeper, which I found ridiculous. She didn't really have bad legs. She was just pretending. As I thought about all of this, Alice raised her voice again. Housework is a wife's duty. Are you planning to abandon that responsibility? Well, considering I'm thinking about getting a divorce, then pay up. Pay compensation for the divorce trial. Alice slammed her hand on the office desk. I flinched slightly, then calmly responded. And why would I do that? I haven't done anything wrong. Huh? You slacked off on the housework. Do you really think you deserve to be a wife to my son? Alice's spittle flew as she spoke. I grimaced and shot back. Then I can demand compensation from Matthew in the divorce trial, too. And from you as well, Alice. What? After all, Matthew doesn't do any housework either. Right. As I said this, Matthew started to panic visibly. Well, yay, but that's because I have a job. Sorry, but so do I. And, by the way, Matthew and I split the household expenses evenly. We each contribute $1,000 from our paychecks. That $2,000 total is what we use to run our household. The rest of our money is our own allowance. I save most of mine, but Matthew spends his on games and comics. Not that I mind. He does contribute his fair share to our expenses. However, in every other sense, our relationship is far from equal. For instance, nearly all of the housework falls on me. Cooking, laundry, cleaning, all of it is my responsibility. Paying bills, handling errands, grocery shopping, it's all on me. So, if we go by Alice's logic, I should be able to demand compensation from Matthew in a divorce trial as well. Legally, that might be difficult. Sure, some of it would be taken into account, but considering it's not the main cause of the divorce, it likely wouldn't make much difference in a trial. The real problem is Alice's constant interference in our married life. She uses her status as my mother-in-law to impose all kinds of pressure on me. That's the real issue, isn't it? I asked. And Alice fell silent. I glanced over at Matthew, who quickly looked away. Is that what you do when things get inconvenient? Just stay quiet. Anyway, I'm sorry about Mom. I apologize, so please come back. Matthew pleaded earnestly. I rejected him immediately. No way. Why not? I'm apologizing, aren't I? His apology didn't mean anything to me, because the problem wasn't just Alice. Even though I had told him that yesterday, Matthew still seemed clueless. He looked at me, his face full of confusion. How can he be so oblivious? My irritation grew. Then Alice spoke up. First things first, come home. Even if you're getting a divorce, you can't just leave your things there. Those are, clean up the house before you leave, pack your things, and make sure everything is tidy before you go. If you're leaving, then leave everything spotless. Alice started spouting some nonsensical logic. I didn't know how to respond, so I decided to play my trump card and reached for my smartphone. What are you doing? Oh, just a moment. I gestured for Alice to wait while I sent a message to someone. Enough of this. Are you even listening to me? Alice's irritated voice rose as she shouted at me. I instinctively closed my eyes. But then, the office door was knocked upon. Without a word, Brian quickly stood up and walked to the door. When he opened it, someone stepped in. As soon as he saw Alice, the man spoke with a sigh. What are you doing here, making a scene? The man who entered the office was Ron. He stared straight at Alice, who was causing such a commotion. Ron, what are you doing here? Alice's eyes widened in shock. Meanwhile, Ron sighed deeply and replied, Sophia invited me. Said it was to thank me for all I do. What? But she said she wanted me to relax while you were gone. Ron's gaze turned stern as he looked at Alice. I couldn't help but smirk at Alice's reaction. Actually, the story goes back a bit. About 2 weeks ago, right after Alice stormed out on Ron and moved into our house, I thought Ron might be worried, so I gave him a call. Ron, Alice is staying at our place right now. Is that so? I apologize for the trouble. Not at all. But since it's a good opportunity, why don't you take some time for yourself and relax? With that, I invited Ron to stay at my family's inn. Ron said he'd come after 2 weeks, once he could arrange his work schedule. And that's why I had tolerated Alice's presence for those 2 weeks. So when I heard Ron had arrived at the inn, I decided to put my plan into action. And that's why Ron is here. You understand now, Alice? I asked, watching Alice's face twist in anger. She scowled and looked like she was about to say something. Is there something you'd like to say? Of course there is. This is cowardly, how dare you? Well, without doing it this way, it would have been hard to prove that your legs aren't really bad, right? The moment I said that, Alice's face froze. I glanced over at Ron, who was now red with anger. The reason for that was simple: the location of the inn itself. Our family's inn is in a rural mountain town. The bus only goes part of the way, and the rest of the journey has to be made on foot. Even if someone drives their own car, there's no parking space in front of the inn. In fact, there's no wide road for cars at all, only narrow paths that people can walk through. The parking lot is near the bus stop, so the only way to reach the inn is by walking. It's just a 5-minute walk, but it's on a mountain path. Naturally, all the guests who stay at the inn have to walk there. Alice must have walked all the way here as well. It's not a steep path, but you walked a mountain trail just fine, didn't you? Despite your bad legs. I flashed a sly smile. Alice turned her face away, as if caught off guard. How did you get here? Ron asked. Well, were you lying about your legs this whole time? Ron's voice rose in anger. At that moment, Alice was visibly startled. No, it's not like that. I mean, I've heard enough. Were you deceiving me all along? Ron's question left Alice speechless. He, on the other hand, let out a deep sigh. I'm done with you. It's over. Divorce, he said softly, almost in a whisper, before walking out of the office. Wait, please, it's not like that. Alice desperately chased after him, but I stayed silent, just watching. A moment later, I heard Alice scream loudly. "No!" What? I rushed out of the office to find Alice sprawled at the bottom of the staircase, clutching her leg. Ouch! It hurts. She was holding her leg, and it looked like she had fallen while trying to catch up to Ron. In the end, Alice was taken to the hospital. Later on, at the hospital, Alice was diagnosed with a broken leg. You brought this on yourself, I thought, but I couldn't help feeling a bit sorry for her. All I wanted was to reveal the truth, not to actually hurt her. Ironically, she ended up with an actual leg injury. But anyway, with Ron stepping in, my divorce from Matthew became final. Since breaking her leg, Alice had been living in a wheelchair. With Alice out of the way, all that's left is to find a new place to live. For now, I got Matthew to sign the divorce papers, but I hadn't found a new place to live yet. So my things were still at Matthew's house, and I was staying in a hotel while searching for a new home. After the divorce, it would be a place I'd likely live in for a long time. Tomorrow was my day off, so I planned to view a few places. After work, I was thinking about all these things. That's when Alice called me out of the blue. I frowned as I answered the phone. Hello? Is this Alice? Don't call me Alice. You're not my son's wife anymore. Right. I sighed again, realizing she was technically right. But I continued. So what do you want? You know how much I hate you, don't you? It wasn't my fault she ended up in a wheelchair, but I knew she blamed me for any compensation for the divorce. You can try all you want in court. I decided to get ahead of whatever she was plotting. But Alice's plan wasn't anything like that. Who cares about divorce money? I've got a much better way to hurt you. What better way? Oh, yes, I've thrown away everything you care about. Alice laughed loudly, a harsh ha-ha-ha, echoing in my ear. What could she mean by everything I care about? After a moment's thought, I realized my things were still at Matthew's place. You didn't. My belongings. That's right. I sold all of it. So that's what she did. Panicking, I quickly grabbed my bag and rushed to hail a taxi. Speeding toward the house I had lived in with Matthew, I found Alice waiting outside, laughing like a maniac. You sold my stuff without permission. You're the one who left it behind. That's just despicable. I brushed past Alice, rushing straight to Matthew's room. Once inside, I immediately checked my belongings, opening one box, then another. Finding all my things intact, I let out a sigh of relief. It's too late to regret it now. Alice sneered. What are you talking about? I already sold everything, so there's no way to get it back. Look, here's the money they paid me. Alice held up several $100 bills, so I responded with a calm smile. Well, you should tell Matthew that. Huh, Matthew? Why? Alice looked at me, puzzled. I explained it to her clearly. I kept my belongings in Matthew's room, and I moved Matthew's stuff into my room. What? I figured you might try something like this, Alice. Unlike Matthew, I lived a pretty simple lifestyle. Of course, I wouldn't call myself a minimalist, but my belongings only consisted of clothes, makeup, a smartphone, and a tablet. The TV in the living room was enough for me, and I could watch movies on my tablet. To be honest, I didn't really need much. On the other hand, Matthew loved games and comics. He was practically a collector. His room was overflowing with items, and there were large cardboard boxes everywhere. So I made a suggestion to Matthew. Why don't we swap rooms for a while? You can use mine, and I'll put my things in your room. Needless to say, this was after our divorce was finalized. Knowing how few belongings I had, Matthew quickly agreed to my proposal. So what you ended up selling was probably all of Matthew's stuff. What? No way. How much did you sell it for? I looked closely at the handful of $100 bills Alice held. She had about 10 of them clutched tightly in her hand. Turning away from Alice, who was now stunned, I picked up the box containing my belongings. Well, I'll just take my small amount of stuff and go. After giving her shoulder a gentle pat, I walked out of the house. Just a few minutes later, I received a frantic call from Matthew. He was asking about the whereabouts of his belongings. But how would I know? When I told him it seemed Alice had sold them, I could hear his loud voice shouting through the phone. Meanwhile, Alice's voice could be heard yelling back just as loudly in the background. It was clear who was at fault. After listening for a while, I gathered that Matthew had finally decided to cut ties with Alice. Following that, as Ron had declared, my parents-in-law got divorced. However, Alice was abandoned by Matthew as well. In the end, with nowhere else to go, Alice ended up living on her own. She was a bit too young to qualify for her pension, and it's not like she had any savings to fall back on. Desperate, Alice tried to move back in with Matthew. Naturally, he wanted to kick her out, but due to social expectations and appearances, he couldn't do so openly. So now, Matthew works tirelessly every day, taking care of Alice's bad legs while trying to manage his job. When Alice finally becomes eligible for her pension, I'm sure Matthew will take every cent he can from her. He wouldn't be satisfied otherwise. And as for Alice's leg, considering her age, it's unlikely to ever fully heal. There's a good chance she'll remain in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Matthew mentioned this to me when we were discussing the divorce settlement. Well, they both brought this upon themselves. It's no longer any of my concern. As for me, my divorce went smoothly, so I was able to continue working as a nurse. I can't say I'm ready to think about remarriage just yet, but if the right person comes along, who knows? I feel bad for all the trouble I caused. Maybe I can introduce you to someone, Ron said at one point. Please, don't worry about it. Besides, how's living on your own going? I replied. Oh, I'm fine. I had been using a housekeeping service anyway. Ron laughed as he left, but there was a hint of sadness in his demeanor. I wondered if he was truly looking forward, and when I thought about that, I felt a surge of energy within myself. All right, I'll do my best, too, I said aloud, almost as if to convince myself. Then I firmly set my sights on the path ahead. That woman, she's always been a liar. Ha ha ha. Cancer. How exaggerated. She just wanted to skip work. These were the words spoken by my sister Amber's husband, Rodney. and her mother-in-law, Ramona. Amber is not someone who would lie. I can attest to that, having spent 25 years with her. I utterly despise the two who could say such things to Amber, who is suffering from cancer and urgently needs treatment. It was unforgivable. I felt a strong need to save Amber. I am Selena, 25 years old, working in sales since graduating from college. I managed to join my first choice company, so my mind is always occupied with work. Selena, did you do overtime again today? Don't overwork yourself and get sick. That's what my dad, who has been a company employee for many years, often says out of concern. Dad is kind, has a big heart, and generally doesn't sweat the small stuff. He rarely gets angry, but when he does, it's truly frightening. I remember pushing a friend during a fight in elementary school. The friend fell and got hurt, and it wasn't serious, but my parents were called to the school. I still remember how scary Dad was when he apologized to my friend's parents and later scolded me in the car. He didn't yell, but his angry face was unimaginable from his usually gentle demeanor. I had thought it was my friend's fault for the fight, but Dad must have realized my reluctant apology. After being scolded by Dad, I understood the severity of my actions and regretted them. Mom passed away from an illness before I entered elementary school. I don't have many memories of her, but Dad raised me with plenty of love while working, so I never felt lonely, even on his rest days. My sister Amber, who is 5 years older, has always been the one I can talk to about anything. Despite the age difference, she has been like a friend and sometimes like a mom to me. Selena, you've got someone you like, right? How did you know? I'm thinking about confessing. I could tell Amber things I couldn't say to Dad. Amber and I have never fought. I adore her. When she got engaged, it was to a tall, slender man with a refreshing smile who looked great in a suit. He had visited our house a few times, and I had met him on those occasions, but I'm Rodney, and I'm dating Amber. Thank you for having me. He had visited our house a few times, and I had met him on those occasions, but he greeted me with a refreshing smile each time. She seemed so happy since she started dating Rodney. I've been proposed to. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I cried when she told me about the proposal. I was a bit sad we wouldn't live together anymore, but overjoyed for her happiness. Dad felt the same. He cried when Amber told him about her marriage. I'm sorry for the hardships I caused you since you were little. I'm happy you found happiness. Congratulations. Amber and I were surprised to see Dad's tears, as we had never seen him cry before. When Mom passed away, Amber was in elementary school. She used to go straight to the kitchen after school and learn to cook from Grandma, who occasionally visited. By middle school, she was making dinner as if it were the most natural thing. She never complained, even though I knew she missed out on playing with friends. Dad might have felt guilty about it. Later, Rodney came to a family meeting. He brought sought-after sweets for me and a rare brandy for Dad. I thought he was perfect. I promised to make Amber happy and never make her cry. Thank you. Rodney greeted us politely. Dad also looked relieved. I felt confident that Amber would be in good hands with him. I learned then that Rodney was the heir to a prestigious hotel. After the greetings, they happily got married. Just before Amber left home, I found out she was going to live with her in-laws. Are you sure that's okay? Won't there be harassment like in dramas? As newlyweds, wouldn't it be better if you lived alone? Selena, you worry too much. Their house is big enough for them to have their own space. Did Ramona seem like the type to harass her daughter-in-law? Indeed, I had met Rodney's parents at the wedding, and both were very cheerful and friendly. They were greeting everyone at the venue. Please take good care of Rodney, and even poured me a drink. I felt reassured, thinking that if Amber said it was okay, then it must be. Amber was able to continue her job, though the commute became a bit more challenging. I felt a bit embarrassed for worrying too much. On the day we sent Amber off, I felt happy but also lonely, and I found myself crying in bed. Half a year passed. I hadn't seen Amber, but we exchanged messages occasionally. Her replies were slow, but she seemed to be doing well. I had a lot I wanted to talk to her about, but I refrained from disturbing her happiness. As for me, I was still immersed in my work. Living with Dad made me realize how much I appreciated Amber. I thought I had been helping with household chores, but I found myself forgetting laundry in the washer or burning the food, realizing I wasn't as capable as I thought. Dad just laughed and didn't get angry. Then one day, when Dad was away on a business trip, I worked late and was eating delivery food at home. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be at this late hour, I cautiously went to the door, only to find Amber standing there. Amber? The Amber I saw after a long time had lost a surprising amount of weight in just half a year. It was more accurate to say she looked emaciated rather than just thin. And her complexion was pale. As I rushed to her, she collapsed into my arms. I instinctively hugged her. I took the exhausted Amber to my room and put her to bed. There were many questions I wanted to ask, but I thought it best to let her rest first. Selena, I'm sorry. Amber kept apologizing. It's okay. Just rest for now. We'll talk after. I rushed to the convenience store, bought her some drinks and fever-reducing sheets, and handed them to Amber. What happened? When I asked Amber, I have cancer, but they won't let me go to the hospital. She replied in a hoarse voice, tears streaming down her face. It turned out Amber's happiness lasted only until they started living together. Everyone changed the moment I became a daughter-in-law. Amber said. She said that on the day of her marriage, she was asked to quit her jobs to help with the family business. She accepted this demand. After quitting her job, Amber would wake up at 4 a.m. to thoroughly clean the entire house and prepare breakfast for the family and 10 relatives. Then she would help at the hotel until the evening, followed by making dinner for everyone, doing the laundry, and completing the remaining household chores, not going to bed until late at night. She was only getting about 3 hours of sleep each night, which made my overtime seem trivial in comparison. Moreover, she had no days off. Every day, she faced bullying by Ramona, who meticulously checked every household and work task. Rodney, too, had changed drastically from his kind demeanor before marriage, becoming authoritarian. He didn't help Amber against Ramona's bullying, often siding with Ramona and being harsh. Additionally, Amber had a health checkup before quitting her job, where cancer was detected. Fortunately, it was found early, and she was told that immediate surgery could cure it. However, her family didn't believe her. She pleaded to be hospitalized for the surgery, but was forced to work from dawn till late night instead. I was overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. Just hearing it all made me tear up. What? I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? When I asked Amber, a shocking answer came back. Amber revealed that Ramona and Rodney checked her mobile phone daily and monitored all her replies. She was told it was to ensure she wasn't slacking off in her household and work duties. That's why she couldn't ask for help. During our conversation, Amber's bag kept vibrating with notifications. Is that Rodney? Amber nodded slightly. I'll handle it. Amber, you rest for today. We'll go to the hospital tomorrow. I took Amber's mobile phone to the living room. There were over 100 missed calls. When it rang again, I decided to answer. Hey, where did you run off to? Abandoning your duties, what a failure as a daughter-in-law. Rodney, this is Selena. Hearing my voice, Rodney's tone changed. Oh, Selena, long time, no see. Can you pass the phone to Amber? Why would I do that? Where's that intensity gone? Amber can't come to the phone right now. Rodney, you know Amber has cancer, right? I wanted to yell at him, but I confronted him calmly instead. Ah ha ha. Funny girl. You believe Amber's lies. She doesn't have cancer. She just wanted to avoid housework. What? On what basis are you saying she doesn't have cancer? Amber arrived at my house completely exhausted and emaciated. I'm taking her to the hospital tomorrow. She won't be going back there. She's there, right? I'll come to pick her up. Don't come. If you do, I'll call the police. I hung up the phone. It kept ringing, and I was scared they might come over. But fortunately, they didn't show up, and the calls were just continuous. I turned off Amber's phone. I felt frustrated. I wondered why I hadn't noticed anything before the marriage. It pained me to see my beloved Amber suffering. I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, I took Amber to the hospital early in the morning. Her physical condition had deteriorated significantly, and the doctors advised immediate surgery, so she was admitted to the hospital. At the hospital, I requested that Amber not be allowed to meet anyone who might visit, just to be safe. Then, I went home to bring the necessary things for her hospital stay. When I arrived, Dad had already returned. Dad, something terrible has happened. I had been too upset to tell Dad anything yet. What? What's wrong? Dad looked startled by my urgency. As I explained about Amber, his face gradually turned darker, and by the end, he was red with anger. What? I can't believe this. First, we need to go to the hospital. Let's go. It had been years since I'd seen Dad so angry. We both headed to the hospital where Amber was waiting. Amber, are you okay? Dad, I'm sorry. Don't talk anymore. Just tell me what you want to do from now on. I'll take care of it. I want a divorce. Understood. I silently listened to the exchange between Amber and Dad. As Dad was about to leave the room, I started to follow when I determined to help her. Selena. Wait. Take this. Amber handed me an envelope. What's this? Before I could check, Selena, let's go, called Dad. I put the envelope in my bag and left the room. Dad and I then headed to Rodney's house. Upon arriving, Ramona came out. Finally, you've brought her back. She's not here? She spoke as if nothing was wrong. I couldn't stand it. And Amber has been hospitalized because of you. I told them firmly. Oh my, that sounds terrible. But it must be a sham, right? That girl is a habitual liar. Ramona replied without a hint of remorse. What? A sham? Well, let's discuss this inside, Dad said, and we entered the house. It seemed Ramona was the only one there. Amber's Phil must be at work. I remembered Amber saying he was a workaholic and indifferent to anything but work. He had turned a blind eye to the mistreatment Amber suffered. Then Rodney came from the back. "Oh, long time no see." He greeted us with the same refreshing smile as when we first met. Now I understood that these two were only good on the surface. Amber has cancer. It's not a sham or anything of the sort. Eh ha ha ha. Preston, you're exaggerating. It can't be cancer. I was astounded by Rodney's laughing response. Then look at this. Dad showed them the medical report from the hospital. Ramona and Rodney looked shocked, but quickly. Oh my. It was true. We never believed her because she's always lying. Regular behavior is important, isn't it? Ramona said. Amber doesn't lie. What do you think she is? I couldn't help but interject. A daughter-in-law. Nothing more, nothing less. You wouldn't understand. Being single. A daughter-in-law is supposed to live for the family. Ramona started spouting nonsense. What? Live for the family by not letting her go to the hospital despite her illness, making her work from dawn to midnight? She said everyone changed after coming to this house. Ha ha ha. She's lying about that too. She's good at lying, isn't she? Maybe it's because she's from a single-parent family. Being a daughter-in-law isn't being a guest. It's normal to be strict. No matter what I said, Ramona kept laughing and responding. I felt like crying, but I clenched my teeth and held back, knowing I couldn't let myself cry. Then Dad spoke up. The illness wasn't a lie, was it? Do you have any proof of her other supposed lies? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. It's clear from this conversation that you're unreasonable. We cannot leave Amber in this house. We will proceed with the divorce through a lawyer, as Amber wishes, he said. He seemed calm, but I could tell he was trembling with anger. Preston, please wait. Let me see Amber. I'm sorry for not believing her illness, but as Mom said, Amber often lies. And the claim that Mom was harsh and made her work from dawn to midnight is false. I think we can sort it out if we talk. Please let me see Amber, Rodney pleaded with Dad, apologizing deeply. I was appalled that he still called Amber a liar. And then listen to this. I played a voice recording. It documented Amber's day from early morning to late night. 4:30 a.m., starting to clean. Amber's voice was recorded. This cleaning is inadequate. Look at this dust. A dusty woman like you wouldn't notice, right? Want to be thrown out. Ramona's voice was on the recording. In another part, I have cancer. Please let me go to the hospital. Amber pleaded, to which Rodney responded, Shut up. If you have time to say that, work. Maybe working hard will cure it. It was unbelievable. Ramona and Rodney were speechless, seemingly unaware they had been recorded. Now, who is the liar? We'll be leaving. If you try to approach Amber again, I will not forgive you, Dad said, and we left the house, heading back to the hospital. When we told Amber about the discussion, "Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for Dad and Selena," she cried. "It was because of your recording, Amber," I told her. When we left the room, the envelope Amber handed me contained the voice recorder. On the day Amber fled to our home, she had hidden the recorder in her clothing. Amber must have known that her in-laws would pretend not to know anything. She realized she needed evidence. Her previous job at a publishing house had given her access to a voice recorder. Knowing Ramona and Rodney, it was risky. There was no telling what they would do if they found out. It must have required a great deal of courage. It must have taken a lot of courage for Amber to record everything in secret. Later, Dad found a strong divorce lawyer, and the divorce was successfully finalized. I followed Amber's example and recorded our conversation with Ramona and Rodney on my mobile phone. The fact that Amber had cancer and they denied her medical care, coupled with the two recordings, enabled us to secure a substantial settlement in the divorce trial. The lawyer told us that the hotel run by Rodney's family was in dire financial straits. They couldn't afford the settlement and asked to pay in installments. But the lawyer rejected the request without even consulting us. With the lump sum payment, it seemed only a matter of time before the hotel would close. Curious, I checked the hotel's reviews and found them to be quite low. It made sense to me people like that couldn't possibly offer warm hospitality. A friend living near the hotel told me that neighbors had overheard our conversation with Ramona on the day Dad and I visited. In a small town, rumors spread quickly, and it seems they were now viewed coldly by the community. Amber's surgery was a success, and she was discharged from the hospital after about a month and a half, looking a bit healthier than the day she had fled to our house. She decided to spend some time recovering at home, continuing outpatient treatments. I was happy that the three of us were living together again. I'm thinking of making Dad's favorite steak today. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I can leave work early today, so I'll buy the ingredients on my way home. Amber's cooking was incomparably delicious compared to mine. I couldn't be happier with our days filled with laughter as a family of three.
Christopher's family home was on the top floor of a grand condominium complex. Amanda, the single mother who raised Christopher, greeted us at the door. She was a successful CEO with an aura of a beautiful, bewitching woman. As I stood nervously in front of this incredible lady, Christopher looked at me, laughed, and said, "She may be plain, but she'll make a good housekeeper. Thanks for showing off my skills at housework, honey." As the conversation livened up, Amanda remarked, "I'd love to see your family home." Of course, I'd be delighted. I'll do my best to be a gracious host. Please make yourself at home and relax. It sounds like it will be a fun little getaway, Amanda. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. After graduating high school, I moved to the city for college and started living on my own. Later, I got a job at a design firm. No matter how many years pass, I can't get used to the crowds, but I enjoy both my work and living independently. My boyfriend of 1 year is named Christopher. I love your unpretentious, down-to-earth nature and your slightly ditzy side. That's the kind of compliment he always gives me. He's also a reliable colleague at work. He's serious and strict when it comes to his job. He's kind, too, like when he defends me from intimidating older coworkers. He's a man with so many good qualities. Today, he invited me out to dinner, saying he had something to talk about. I wonder what's up. He usually likes to come over to my apartment and eat my home cooking, so why go out of his way to make reservations at a restaurant? Could it be a proposal? Is it okay for me to get my hopes up? Maybe it's too soon? The restaurant we arrived at, full of anticipation, had a high-class exterior. Wow, how fancy! I couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Christopher lowly said, "It's a full-course meal, but..." "Sarah, are you okay with this kind of place?" "Yeah. I'm not a picky eater," I replied with a smile, although I was a bit puzzled by Christopher's unusual gaze. The poised staff brought out one dish at a time. Wine was poured into large glasses, and the equally large plates were adorned with bite-sized delicacies. They were drizzled with a mysterious sauce I could never make myself, and the flavor was indescribably delicious. Even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that Christopher had been staring at me intently for a while now. "Is something wrong?" "No, it's nothing," he replied. Could he be waiting for the right moment to propose? I felt like my heart might burst with anticipation before the end of the course. As dessert arrived, Christopher said with a smile, "You passed." "Passed what? And was there a possibility of failing?" "I was evaluating you," he explained. "What do you mean?" "Your cooking skills are decent, you're neat and tidy, and your table manners are impeccable. You're simple and modest, but those are desirable qualities in a wife." He took out a small box and showed me the contents, much to my surprise. "I want you to marry me." I knew it. As my eyes sparkled with joy, Christopher slipped the ring onto my finger. "I'd like to introduce you to my parents. I want you to come to my home. You'll meet them, won't you?" I had no reason to refuse. I nodded, gazing dreamily at the glittering ring. Christopher told me he only had his mother, Amanda. His parents had divorced when he was in elementary school. His mother raised Christopher as a single mom. After the divorce, she started a diet food company on her own, and its mail order sales are top class. She's now a female CEO with 10 employees. Apparently, there's a secret to business that only Amanda knows. I wonder what kind of person she is. I'm looking forward to meeting her. The day arrived quickly. It's my first family meeting, of course, so I'm really nervous. I have to make sure I don't do anything rude. I chose a dress that was more elegant than usual. I'm especially prone to careless mistakes, as even Christopher admits. "Are you nervous, by any chance?" Christopher asked as he walked beside me. "Not at all." I lied, not wanting him to worry. Then he said, "Haven't you noticed?" "Noticed what?" "Your face is stiff and your walking is awkward. Smile like you always do." Seeing his smile as he said that made me smile too. My whole body relaxed as the tension left me. I must have been quite tense in the shoulders. "I'm sorry, I actually am nervous. It's been a while since I've worn heels, too." "You don't need to apologize." "I'm clumsy, so I was worried about making a blunder." "It'll be fine. If you're my fiancé, my mom will like you." Being called his fiancé made me embarrassed and nervous again. But looking into his kind eyes calmed me down. He really is special to me. I take a deep breath and compose myself. I'll trust Christopher, who said he likes me as I am, without pretenses. Christopher's family home was on the top floor of a grand condominium complex. A spacious entrance and large windows with a great view. A chandelier hung in the all-white room. It was like a model room. Amanda, who greeted us, was what you'd call an ageless beauty. She had a dignified presence, with an aura of a female CEO. Was the height of her teased bangs a symbol of her nobility? When she moved, she carried her own actress light. Amazing, too amazing. Her commitment to beauty was thorough. I sat down in a chair at her urging. Being observed from head to toe made me nervous again. "Where are your parents, dear?" "In New England." "I thought so. You have a country face." "That's amazing." "You can tell?" "Well, yes. You're plain, after all." Amanda stared intently at my face. I stared back, wondering if I could hide my country face if I put on makeup as carefully as her. Her false eyelashes fluttered dramatically. "Christopher, is this the type of girl you like?" Haha, she may be plain, but she'll make a good housekeeper, Christopher said, showing off my housekeeping skills. That's right, we'll need her to at least be a housekeeper, Amanda chimed in. These days, it's normal for women to work and do housework. If you think you can rely on your husband, you're sorely mistaken. You should learn from me, who succeeded as a CEO while raising a child alone. I nodded as I listened to her. I have great respect for women who have their own opinions. Personally, I believe that a married couple should help each other. But it's okay for everyone to have their own ideas, right? Do you have any special skills, dear? I'm good at cooking. I learned from my family. I see. I focus on nutritional balance and use ingredients without wasting them. I put a lot of thought into it. Ah. I see. You're just as I imagined. Really? That makes me happy. Well, you do have a poor-looking face. A poor-looking face? Is that a compliment? Christopher, sitting next to me, had his usual smile on his face. Hey, just now. What's wrong? No, it's nothing. Maybe I misheard her. Surely she wouldn't call me poor to my face when we just met. I hate being patient, you know. Huh? I hate it, so I worked hard to become rich. I see. Before I knew it, Amanda was holding a large wine glass. She downed the vivid ruby-colored liquid in one go. Is she drunk? For me, wine is like water. Is that so? It's a CEO's taste. Is that right? You're 30 years too early to talk about wine on the same level as me. I see. That's right. Don't you think it takes a lot of money for a person to mature like fine wine? Huh? Is that so? What do you think? I'm not quite sure what she's talking about. For now, I'll just ignore the wine talk. My parents taught me that money should be used carefully. Ha! That's good. You should use your money carefully and little by little, just as your parents told you. When the time comes, quit your current job and come help out at my company, okay? I'll think about it. Just to be clear, it's helping out, okay? You understand? Don't expect to be paid. Oh, so that's what she meant. If it's just helping out, I probably don't need to quit my job. It shouldn't be a problem. Yes. I understand. Good answer. When the time comes, I'll teach you the secrets of business that only I know. Are you sure? Thank you so much. Ho ho ho, you're so naturally amusing. I bet you grew up in a laid-back countryside. I'd love to see your family home. Sure, why not? Huh? Please come visit my family home. If it's Amanda's request, I definitely want to fulfill it. I invited the two of them to my family home. They're going to be relatives, so I'm sure my parents back home will welcome them warmly. But for some reason, she refused. Why not? That's not what I meant when I said that. She said she wanted to see it, so there's no need to hold back. I won't give up. Come on, please come visit. No way, the countryside is so inconvenient, right? But didn't you say you wanted to see my family home? Well, yes, but I'll do my best to be a great host. We have freshly picked vegetables and fruits. They're delicious and good for your beauty too. But we can pick lots of truffles, and you can eat as much as you want. What? I can eat truffles all I want. Hearing that, Amanda happily agreed. When I called my parents, they were of course very welcoming. You're bringing your fiancé? How exciting! My mother, Megan, was surprised but overjoyed. What? His mother is a CEO? We have to make sure not to be rude. My father, Brian, was flustered. I'm looking forward to it too. Please take good care of them. I asked them to provide a polite reception for my future husband and his particular mother. The day before our departure. Hey, what kind of place is Sarah's family home? Christopher asked. What do you mean? It's just normal. I'm not good with the countryside, you know. What? I was shocked. That fact can't be changed. It must be inconvenient to get around, right? Shopping and stuff must be a hassle too. That's true. I definitely wouldn't want to live there. I couldn't respond. Was he always the type to say things like this? Having my hometown casually insulted hurt me a bit, I have to admit. I decided to ask him about something that had been bothering me these past few days. You've been kind of different lately. What do you mean? Ever since we went to your family home for the family meeting, your attitude has been cold, or maybe harsh. You've been saying more things that concern me. He let out an exaggerated sigh. I'm amazed by you. I was just stating my opinion. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. If you're going to be my wife, you should understand me, right? You're right. This is why people from the countryside are. What should I do? I put him in a bad mood. I said it the wrong way. Being from the countryside and understanding your future husband are unrelated, aren't they? I still don't feel satisfied, but tomorrow is already the day we leave. Just like I was, maybe Christopher is nervous too. I'm sure that's it. It's okay, don't worry. I've already made preparations. And my parents are so kind, I'm sure they'll make him feel so at home he won't want to leave. Let's overwrite that negative image of the countryside. Departure day. Of course, we specified business class for the flight, and we're finally heading to my family home. I was tricked by the truffles. I shouldn't have said I'd go. Amanda kept muttering to herself. She must be tired from work, poor thing. If she sees the clear air and wide open skies of the countryside, I'm sure she'll feel refreshed. The countryside is nice in a different way from the city. Huh? I think you will like it too. Like what? I bet even if you want to go shopping, there aren't any decent stores, right? That's true. Plus, it takes quite a while by car. The countryside has nothing, unlike the city. Shall we do a room tour? The house and garden are spacious, so it's fun. Huh? Houses in the countryside are just big, right? At that moment, Christopher came to my rescue. Now, Mom, let's at least go see it once. Well, I suppose so. After all, we'll be relying on her as a daughter-in-law from now on. Exactly. If Christopher says so, I guess I have no choice. Thank goodness. Thanks to Christopher, her mood seems to have improved. But I'm envious of how close they are as parent and child. They told jokes to make me laugh several times before we reached our destination. Christopher suddenly said to me, I'm always troubled because you are so easygoing. To which Amanda jokingly replied, Isn't it because of the time difference between the countryside and the city? Ahahaha. There's no time difference, that's funny. I know that. Sheesh. She really has a great sense of humor. Later on, Christopher said, Mom, the luggage looks heavy, and I'm heavy too. And Amanda chimed in. Yes, I wonder if there's a daughter-in-law somewhere who can carry our heavy luggage. They seem to be in a pickle. Yeah, I wonder where. What a truly troubling problem indeed. Where could we find a daughter-in-law who can carry lots of luggage? We had a fun time with that kind of banter. Perhaps because of the long journey, the two of them seemed to be in a bad mood. I should let them relax at my family home soon. When the plane arrived at the airport, a car from my family home was there to pick us up. "Welcome back," the driver said as he opened the door. Christopher seemed curious about the driver and asked, "Is that Sarah's dad?" "No, it can't be, right?" So I replied, "Yeah. He's our private driver." They looked surprised when I said that. "Private driver." Hearing that, Amanda said, "They probably hire one because you can't go anywhere without a car in the countryside. It's not unusual there. I bet your parents surrendered their driver's licenses." "I see, that makes sense. My parents are still going strong with cars and other vehicles, but there's no need to correct her every little thing." After driving for a while, familiar scenery came into view. "We're here," I said. "Huh? Where?" "There's still more to go, right?" The two of them looked around. At first glance, it looked like a tree-lined path, but we had already passed through the gate to the house. "Wait, we're already on the property?" "Yes, we'll drive a bit further. It's quite a distance to the front door. It's like we're in a forest." "That's right. The gardener takes care of it every day, but it's still not enough." "Well, it's the countryside, so it's not unusual, right?" I wonder what's wrong. Her voice is trembling. Could it be car sickness? When the car stopped at the front door, she stared at the building with her mouth agape. I'm worried she might be feeling unwell after all. "Amanda, are you okay?" "This is your family home?" "Yes. It was just rebuilt, so it's new." Next to her, Christopher muttered, "It's so huge." "It's 0.2 acres, but since it's only one story, it's nothing special. It's like a maze, so it's fun. It's just big, that's all." Seeing the woman who greeted us. "Welcome back," while taking my luggage at the front door. Christopher asked, "Who's that?" "That's Hannah, our housekeeper." "Housekeeper?" The two of them stared intently at Hannah as she greeted them. "She's also my teacher who taught me cooking, sewing, piano, and violin." "Then it's no wonder you have good table manners." "It's the countryside, so it's not unusual." "Mom, do people in the countryside usually have housekeepers?" "Be quiet. You're being unsightly. If you're my son, carry yourself with confidence." "Okay." "After all, you're just a country bumpkin." "That's right, that's why." "Well, I know you must be tired, but let's go on the room tour we promised right away." I have nothing to hide, so I want them to see everything. First is my father's prized art collection. Apparently, it's valued at $50,000. Then there's the theater room, sauna, and private gym. Oh? Is this a study? It's locked. Looks like they've added on again. Every time I come back, there are more rooms. "You said your house was normal, but there's no way it's normal with such a big house. Are you rich?" Christopher asks as we walk down the long hallway. "Let me ask you instead, isn't your house not normal?" "My house is richer than normal, right? My mom is a CEO, after all." What is normal, I wonder? With that thought, I continue down the hallway. I show the two of them to the guest room, designed to resemble a resort hotel. "Please stay here tonight." "Stay?" "No, we're going back, right, Mom?" "No way. I prepared top-quality shampoo and other amenities just for you two." "Sorry, but my mom says she wants to get back to the city as soon as possible." "Right, Mom?" Well, if it's like this, it's not so bad. She seems to like it. Since they've come all this way, I want them to relax and heal from their daily fatigue. I'll ask Hannah to give them her specialty foot reflexology massage too. Afterward, I guide them to the living room where my parents are waiting. After the formal greetings, Amanda takes out a long, thin box. I'm so happy she went out of her way to bring a gift. Inside is what looks like an expensive wine. Oh my! Thank you so much. I'm delighted. To my overjoyed mother, Amanda says, I couldn't come empty-handed, could I? This is a rare wine, almost too good for those who can't appreciate its taste. Hearing that, my mother happily says, I love wine too. So much that I personally import it. Import? I import from overseas wineries and sell it to French restaurants, hotels, and such. Oh, I see. My mother talks about wine with great enthusiasm. Apparently, the room they added on earlier is a wine cellar. It's all wine. It's our inventory, and also our collection. Oh, I see. Amanda says, her voice trembling with admiration. I know, why don't you join me for a wine tasting sometime? My mother suggests, her eyes sparkling. Amanda, that's great. Please talk about wine with my mother to your heart's content. If our schedules align, I'd love to. My mother, with her extensive wine knowledge, should be more than a sufficient conversation partner. I want them to chat as much as they like. My father says, for dinner, our housekeeper has prepared dishes brimming with truffles and red wine, putting her best effort into it. Truffles, wine. Mom, if you drink, it'll be too late to go back. You said you absolutely hate staying in the countryside. Be quiet. We can think about that after we eat. If you're worried about time, I can take you back in my helicopter. It's faster than flying back. I just built a heliport nearby. What? A helicopter? Yes, a helicopter. It's my hobby. Oh no, Amanda suddenly seems to be getting dizzy. Supporting her, Christopher says, this is definitely not a normal house. Abruptly, Amanda's eyes widen. I've decided. She grabs my surprised parents' hands and excitedly says, let's talk business. Huh? I'm worried about whether my company will be accepted in the countryside, but with your money. I mean, your influence, there's no need to worry. With your sons, we'll be secure. It's not a bad deal, right? Amanda suddenly becomes lively. My parents are stunned. If you can make the company big enough to succeed in the countryside, I'll even hand it over to you as is. No, are you dissatisfied with something? I guess you're worried about spending your golden years in a place like this. Well, if you want to live comfortably in the city, I can at least support you in moving. I'll even lend you Sarah from time to time. Amanda speaks rapidly, one thing after another, in work mode. Next to her, Christopher wears an exaggerated smile. By the way, what kind of company is it? My mother asks the excited Amanda. As if she was waiting for this, she starts explaining about the diet food. Then my mother says, I also sell beauty-related products. Diet products have really evolved, haven't they? Amanda is surprised. Earlier, didn't you say your business was selling wine? I just started with wine recently. Oh my! You're active in many areas, how wonderful! Oh no, not at all. I have high hopes for your work. Amanda tries to take my mother's hand, but my father gently stops her. Let's discuss that another time, at a leisurely pace. Today, let's forget about work. We decided to have them relax in their room until dinner was ready. I can hear Amanda muttering, if it's like this, I wouldn't mind staying over again. Nothing could make me happier than knowing her negative feelings toward the countryside have lessened. Around the time the table setting was finished, Hannah called out to me. "Please come with me." She took me to the guest room. I thought she had come to call us because dinner was ready, but I'm told to wait in front of the door. "Excuse me," Hannah says as she enters the room alone. "Oh, you're the housekeeper, right? Are you here for the foot reflexology massage?" "Yes, that's right." "Please, go ahead. What should I do here?" I can hear the conversation inside the room. The one who spoke was Hannah. "I have something to discuss with you. I would like you to pretend this marriage never happened." "Huh? Hey, what's a mere housekeeper saying?" Christopher interjects with a half laugh. "Be quiet." "What?" "Watch your mouth." "What?" What in the world is she saying? I'm so shocked I can't even speak. "You seem to know some wonderful secrets of the trade." "What are you trying to say?" "Also, both of you have impure relationships. It seems you have many close friends of the opposite sex." Hey! What is this? Did you hire a private investigator? This is a violation of privacy. Don't try to play it off. Background checks before marriage are normal. What does this mean? Is it true? Even as I panic, I can't stop listening to the conversation through the door. "What do you want?" "Huh? Fine. Quit being a housekeeper in this backwater and come work for me." "Ow. Your liver is in bad shape." It seems she's in the middle of the foot reflexology massage. I decline. "Why?" "I have high expectations for you, having witnessed this family's business. You understand what I mean, right? I'll pay you a lot." "Your company is already done." "Huh? The secret to business, was it? I'm sure counterfeit products sell well." "How do you know about that?" "Ow! Stop pressing!" Running a business bordering on fraud like that will ruin you eventually. I won't stand for you calling it counterfeits and fraud. What's wrong with making money smartly? Smartly? Don't you mean dishonestly? Ow! That's the pressure point that hurts when you lie. Huh? I caught my breath. The color drained from my face. Not only because of the content of the conversation, but also because I know that Hannah's foot reflexology massage is incredibly painful. Ow! Please stop! No more! Hearing Amanda's scream, I can't hold back and burst into the room. "Hannah." Christopher is surprised by my sudden appearance, but he quickly rushes over to me. "Listen to me. This woman is trying to trap my mother. At this rate, my marriage with Sarah will be ruined too." Christopher pleads with tears in his eyes. "The company will be mine eventually. Even if you are an idiot, you should understand, right? Protecting my mother means protecting our future. When your parents come to the city they admire, they'll be dependent on me and my mother. You should mediate and handle things well, don't you think?" Even as I'm taken aback by Christopher's rapid-fire speech, there's something I want to make clear. You see, my parents handed over the company they ran in the city to my brother and moved to the countryside to relax. What? So they don't have any longing for the city. They weren't just wealthy people from the countryside? Why do you have such prejudice and an infiltration feeling toward the countryside? I don't understand you anymore. Is it true that you have other women you're close with? Do you truly love me? My questions seem to get on his nerves, and Christopher raises his voice. Shut up! I never thought you were this kind of woman. Instead of answering when I asked if he loved me, he threw harsh words at me. I'm stunned. I'm so shocked I can't speak. Please stop, Hannah said. You stay out of this. Christopher snaps, his attitude completely changed. What are you trying to do? Hannah doesn't back down. What? I'm Sarah's future husband. No, you're wrong. She firmly retorts to the glaring Christopher. You're a con artist who looks down on people and has no qualms about deceiving them. Did you hear that? She called us con artists. That's terrible to say to your future husband, isn't it? Christopher stares at me. That's right, it's terrible, Amanda said. Hearing that, I said, yes. It's unbelievable. That's what I said. Right? You should fire this housekeeper. No, this marriage is unbelievable. What? What? Didn't you hear me? I absolutely refuse this marriage. What? I'm the one who requested the background check. I asked an agency through Hannah. You did, Sarah? Why? You couldn't trust me? Christopher asks in a trembling voice. Ever since you invited me to dinner, it's been bothering me. I wondered if I was really making the right choice with this person. For that long? That's right. Why? I told you that you passed. I let out a wry laugh at the overly desperate Christopher. Then, you've been failing since long ago. What? How dare you? Amanda interjects. Just how upstanding do you think you are? Aren't you ashamed? Wah, wah. They seem to be at a loss for words. How dare you? Don't say that to my mother. Take it back. Even as he yells at me, the resolute me is surprisingly unaffected. I'm not scared at all. If anything, I just think he's the worst for treating a woman this way. First, can you take back what you said to me? Everything, without leaving anything out, about being a housekeeper or having a poor-looking face. You deceived me. That's your true nature. You were hiding it. That's my line. You suddenly started treating me roughly after meeting Amanda. Is it because you got an ally and became more aggressive? Don't get carried away. I calmly stare at Christopher, who's furiously turning red in the face. I'm disillusioned by you, saying petty things about the city and the countryside. I'll make sure a plain woman like you can't even stay at the company, so be prepared. Aren't you ashamed of putting on airs so arrogantly when you don't even have that kind of authority? The two of them glare at me, breathing heavily. I'm truly amazed. I'm leaving. If I stay in this countryside any longer, I'll start smelling like dirt. I hate it. Amanda grabs her luggage and coat while saying things that sound like a child's insults. Hearing that, my parents hurriedly come over and ask, "What's wrong?" There's nothing wrong. If you're leaving, please take this with you, my mother says, handing over a paper bag. Oh? Truffles? You wrapped them for me? No, it's the wine you brought. What? My mother says apologetically. This wine has been stored carelessly and is in too poor of a condition. I don't want to keep such a thing in the house, so please take it back with you. Huh? You're telling me to take back what I gave you? Rather, I'm surprised you even brought such a worthless wine. Wah! Your value is the same as this wine. My mother, who's not good at jokes, says something outrageous with a smile. The two of them have strained expressions on their faces. But I don't follow up on it at all. With this final blow, the two of them, unable to say anything back, left in frustration. They wouldn't listen even if we tried to stop them and seemed to be running away. However, it takes 3 hours to walk to the airport from here, and the bus has a 2-hour wait. I think we should have at least called them a taxi, but we're not involved with them anymore, so they can do as they like. My parents seem puzzled as to why the two of them suddenly left. While showing them the background check report, I tell them I'll explain everything later, so for now, let's enjoy the truffles. Afterward, of course, I returned the ring, and the engagement was treated as if it never happened. My parents didn't ask for details, but I'm sure they understand everything. I feel bad for Hannah, who prepared various things, but she said, "Next time, bring your partner to me sooner. I'll assess them for you." Since she said something so reassuring, I'll take her up on that offer without hesitation. By the way, ever since I was a student, my parents told me many times, no matter how much you love someone, make sure to do a background check on your marriage partner for the sake of your future. To avoid getting hurt. I didn't understand what they meant at the time, but now I'm grateful. If I had married him like that, I'm sure I would have had a married life full of regrets. My parents, who are very calm now, have done business while being caught up in the hustle and bustle of the city. They must have seen through Amanda's shallowness. They taught me that work should be done properly. After a while, I received an apology from Christopher. "I only have you, Sarah. My mom is a straightforward person." He came clinging to me like that, but it makes no sense. What did I even like about this person? Did Amanda tell you to say that, by any chance? What? No? She told you to keep me on the hook because I'm rich and might be useful? Huh? How do you know? I can see right through your shallow thinking. I didn't think he was such a terrible man. I realized how poor my judgment was. He's a self-conscious person trapped by his prejudices, unable to go against his mother. Together with Amanda, the trouble is doubled. He's the worst as a marriage partner. Unless he realizes it and changes, he'll fail at the family meeting stage no matter who he dates. Do your best. Don't contact me again. With that, I blocked his number. When I told my company about the situation, I was transferred to a department on a different floor that I had been hoping for, so I don't have to worry about seeing him anymore. That's right, since my new department doesn't have colleagues who are particular about appearance, I should stop dressing plain and be more fashionable. Actually, I really like flashy clothes and makeup. By the way, Christopher's reputation within the company has greatly fallen. I didn't tell anyone at my family home about what happened. Christopher talked about it himself. Even with a poor-looking face, her family home is rich. I thought I had found a good housekeeper, though. It's no wonder his reputation dropped if he's talking loudly like that. He probably won't find a marriage partner within this company. There's no point in taking over Amanda's failing company now. A city condominium is nice, but comfort and sense of value are different for everyone, so it's wrong to complain or deny them. What is normal? It's not good to force your idea of normal on others. I love the one-room apartment I live in now too. It's my own castle. No one can decide superiority, inferiority, pass, or fail for someone else. Everyone is different, and everyone is good. Didn't we all learn that when we were little? Their house is theirs, and our house is ours. Hey, you're the new hire, right? Go fetch me some coffee for now. I'm tired from walking all the way here. Huh? I doubted my ears, but what I just heard didn't seem to be a mistake. There was a shop on your way here, right? Go buy some coffee there. Why would I do that? As soon as I blurted out what I was thinking, Riley's face clouded over again. How long does it take you to buy some damn coffee? Riley crossed her legs on the sofa and said irritably, perhaps sensing my approach as she fiddled with her mobile phone. And I don't even need that much coffee. God, you're really dumb. Well, whatever, just hurry up and give it to me. Riley held out her hand to me, but I didn't hand her the coffee. No, you shouldn't drink this right now, I said, refusing. My name is Stella, 35 years old. I'm currently on a plane back to America. As the American cityscape gradually comes into view from the sky, I feel nostalgic for my first return to the US in 7 years. My company mainly deals with IT, and when an overseas branch was established 7 years ago, I was posted there at the same time. I hadn't been back to America since then, but now that the personnel at the overseas branch have stabilized, I'm returning to the head office. My long yet short life abroad is finally coming to an end. The plane landed safely, and as soon as I arrived at the airport, I dropped off my luggage at the hotel where I would be staying until I found a new place to live, then headed to the head office. I had been given 2 weeks off as a preparation period for my return to the head office after coming back to the country, but I love my job so much that I had insisted on going to the head office even just to say hello. Suppressing my excitement, I walked briskly toward the head office, and a large white building came into view. Wow, the exterior is so stylish. I wonder how much money they spent on this. I had been working at this company since I was 20 years old, and when I reached my 5th year, I was posted overseas. But during the 7 years I was away, the head office moved once. The head office I knew only rented 1 floor of a building, but the company's sales increased year by year, and now the entire large building stood there as the head office. Looking up at the company, I entered through the entrance and went to the reception desk. Hello. What can I do for you today? Is Andrew in? I said to the receptionist. Then, at the same time as I heard footsteps in the back. Oh, Stella. Over here, over here. I heard a voice a little distance away. Turning around, Daniel, my subordinate, came running up to me. Long time no see, Daniel. Daniel was an employee who had been my subordinate before I was posted overseas, and we said that it would be nice to see each other again when I came back. Apparently, he had been working diligently for the past 7 years, and today he came to greet me. Geez, Stella. When I heard you were coming all of a sudden, I rushed to finish my work for the day. Really? You didn't have to. But thank you. When I said that, he smiled a bit shyly. Andrew is on duty, so let's go right away, he said, guiding me to the elevator. We went up to the 8th floor, and as soon as we got off the elevator, Daniel's mobile phone rang. Judging from Daniel's tone of voice, it must have been a client or a superior. Gone was his earlier casual demeanor, replaced by a proper, businesslike tone. I'm sorry, Stella. It seems there's an urgent need for project revisions. Andrew is in the room to the right at the end of this hallway, so could you go ahead without me? Sure, no problem. Thanks. With that, Daniel headed for the elevator. I saw him off and started walking down the hallway as instructed. Along the way, I saw a nice office and the employees working, glancing sideways as I walked, when someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. Yes? I turned around to see a woman in her mid-20s carrying a large amount of documents. I haven't seen your face before. Are you from another department? Perfect timing. Can you take these to the second conference room? With that, she shoved the files and documents she was holding at me. Huh? Well, I just arrived today, so I don't really know. When I said that, the female employee made an obviously unpleasant face and let out a big sigh. Useless. We don't need this kind of mid-career hire. Well, whatever. Can you just carry them for now? They're heavy. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I took the documents as they were handed to me. Then, I caught a glimpse of her name tag, which read Riley. I was just confused, as I had never been badmouthed like this upon first meeting someone. Leaving me standing there, Riley was about to turn her back and walk away, but she quickly turned around as if to check on me. "What are you standing there dumbfounded for? Follow me." She glared at me. I was a little irritated by her words and actions, but I couldn't just leave the documents and leave. I thought it would be okay to just deliver it for a bit, so I followed Riley. The second conference room Riley mentioned was on the second floor, quite a distance away. By the time I arrived at the conference room, I was quite exhausted from the weight of the documents I was carrying and the considerable amount of walking. "Okay, good work. Just leave that there," Riley instructed me with a cool face. "Well, you're a new mid-career hire and you were able to help me with my work, so that should be good enough. If anyone asks where you were, just say you were helping Riley with her work." I wondered if Riley was a person of considerable authority, given her high-handed attitude toward me, whom she had just met. Rather than being annoyed with her, I was more curious about that. I left the second conference room with Riley. "Well then, I'll be going now," I said, and was about to head for the elevator when Riley stood in front of me as if to stop me. "Huh? What was that just now? What do you mean? That I'll be going now attitude? You should say thank you very much normally." I didn't understand the point of being scolded for my choice of words by someone so high-handed and incapable of using polite language, but I held back, thinking that I shouldn't argue right now. "I apologize. Excuse me." When I apologized, Riley smiled a bit, perhaps in a better mood. "Well, it's almost a miracle that someone like you was hired mid-career at this company, so be careful with your superiors." I wanted to argue back, but I had somewhere I needed to go, so I endured it in order to end the situation quickly and leave. "Hey, you're new, right? For now, go buy me some coffee. I'm tired from walking all this way." "Huh?" I doubted my ears, but apparently what I just heard wasn't a mistake. "There was a shop on your way here, right? Go buy coffee there." "Why would I do that?" When I blurted out what I was thinking, Riley's face clouded over again. "You probably don't know this since you're new, but I'm the daughter of the head of the business division at this company. Do you have any idea how much power the head of the business division has in this company?" "I see, so Riley is using her parents' position as a shield," I realized in my mind. Come to think of it, I vaguely remember seeing the name John Smith as the head of the business division when I looked at some documents on the website a while back. "Say something." When I was silently thinking, she raised her voice. Her voice echoed throughout the floor, drawing the attention of the surrounding employees to us. "I don't know if you're in your 30s or 40s, but I can have a newcomer like you fired immediately if I just say the word. Is that okay with you?" "You're right, I understand. I'll go buy it." I said that and headed for the shop, and from behind me, "I'll be sitting over there, so hurry up." Riley pointed to a backless sofa placed in a small space near the shop. I saw that, entered the shop, and picked up a coffee. Then, a kind-looking female staff member who appeared to be in her 50s, perhaps out of concern for me, spoke to me. "That was unfortunate. I wonder if something can be done about John's daughter." I was surprised that it could be heard even inside the shop, but it seems that Riley's behavior isn't limited to today. "Is she always like that?" "Yes, as far as I've seen here, she always has someone carry her things, and she always sits on that sofa and has someone else go and buy various things for her." I wondered what Riley thinks this place is, if that kind of thing is done on a regular basis. And, as I stood there wondering, the saleswoman continued. Things weren't like this when John's daughter Riley first joined the company. But I heard rumors that the person who was strictly mentoring Riley was driven to quit by John. Apparently, they were forced to write apology letters day after day. I could barely contain my frustration thinking about how Riley's attitude must have gotten worse and worse once she realized she could eliminate anyone she didn't like by asking John, after getting hired through connections in the first place. My heart went out to the employee tasked with training Riley. Just then, I noticed my phone vibrating in my pocket. Taking it out, I saw Daniel was calling. Sorry, somehow I ended up helping out with an employee's work. I'm at the store now. Yeah, got it. Hanging up, I bought 5 coffees and headed to where Riley was waiting. How long does it take to buy some damn coffee? Riley sensed me approaching as she sat on the couch with her legs crossed, fiddling with her phone. She spat out the words in an irritated tone. And I don't even need that much coffee. God, you're really dumb. Well, whatever, just hurry up and give it to me. Riley held out her hand to me, but I didn't hand her the coffee. No, you shouldn't drink this now, I said, refusing. At that, Riley furrowed her brow and tapped her foot impatiently. What are you saying? You want to quit this company? Hurry up and give it. Her angry shout echoed across the floor, and people around glanced at Riley with looks that said, "Here we go again." Unfazed, I steadfastly refused to hand over the coffee I was holding. Riley stood up, stepped in front of me, and shoved my shoulders hard. You've earned yourself a written apology. Don't regret your actions later. Flashing a nasty grin, she tried to forcibly take the coffee from me. Just then, "Hey, what are you doing?" A voice called out from behind and the sound of approaching footsteps could be heard. I was just training this new employee as part of orientation. Riley explained to Daniel in a sweet, coddling voice, completely different from moments ago. Training? New employee? This person? Riley nodded, and Daniel's gaze shifted between me and her. Daniel seemed utterly confused, with so many questions about the situation. Stella is a new hire? He said, bursting out laughing. Huh? You know her? Riley looked dumbfounded. Know her? Stella, what's this all about? Don't tell me you're here to set this up with the staff. No, this isn't a joke. Let's go. Can I bring her along, too? I said, turning my feet towards the elevator. Wait a minute. I still have work left. Riley tried to make an escape. No, I think this is more important than that work, so come with us. I replied. Silence filled the elevator, broken occasionally by Daniel chuckling to himself. Arriving on the 8th floor, we walked down the hall. Rounding the corner at the end, there was a room labeled President's Office. Riley trailed nervously behind me. Excuse me. Daniel opened the door, and inside a man was staring at his computer screen. As soon as our eyes met. Welcome back. Long time no see. Don't tell me you were checking out the office, too? It's awesome, right? I was very particular with the design. Andrew greeted energetically. It's been a while. Sorry I'm a bit late, Andrew. That's right. The person I was originally planning to meet today, Andrew, is the president of this company. HM? Who's that employee? As Andrew spoke, Riley shook with surprise. Andrew, apparently Stella was mistaken for a new hire and ended up helping with work. Daniel explained with a laugh, and Andrew roared with laughter. Stella did? After laughing heartily, Andrew's expression quickly turned serious. But why would you have a potential client help out like that? What's your name? He turned to Riley. Riley's bravado earlier was gone. She answered quietly, her head slightly bowed. Riley Smith, from sales. Smith? That name rings a bell. Andrew rubbed his chin, deep in thought. She's John's daughter, apparently. More importantly, mind if I sit on that fancy couch? Stella, your sarcasm has improved since going abroad. Andrew and I laughed together as we sat on the sofa. I lined up the coffee I bought on the table and looked at Riley. Go on, Riley, have a seat. Oh, yes. Riley replied, a bit startled, looking puzzled by how friendly we were with each other. But Stella, don't give Daniel too hard a time. He's this company's CTO now, you know. In an IT company like ours, the CTO wields considerable power among the executives. I felt proud seeing a subordinate I've known for so long reach such a position. It's all thanks to Stella. But you didn't have to go buy coffee, we had some prepared here. Daniel picked up the coffee I bought, looking perplexed. It's fine once in a while. Reminds me of our old meetings. We'd drink coffee like this and have really long discussions, remember? Andrew laughed nostalgically at my words. That was back when Stella was still this company's CEO. Those were fun times in their own way. Sometimes we'd argue until morning. What did you just say? When this person was CEO? Riley suddenly raised her voice, looking shocked. New employees like you probably don't know, but Stella used to be this company's CEO. To think she'd be mistaken for a new hire, he said, barely containing his laughter. I guess it means I look young. No big deal. I suppose. But when Stella made the call to expand overseas first, leaving the company to me and going to the foreign branch alone, I wondered what would happen. Thanks to that, the company has grown this much. Andrew looked at me with a serious expression. If Stella wants to return to her old position, I'm prepared to step down. I laughed at Andrew's words. What are you saying? We started this company together. I have no intention of becoming president again now. Let's keep going with you as CEO and me as COO. COO refers to the Chief Operating Officer, essentially the number 2 position in a company. I started this company with Andrew out of a single apartment unit. When we grew the company to the point of renting an entire office floor, I thought we should expand our activities not just in America, but overseas as well. So I flew abroad. But it's quite inconvenient for the CEO to be absent from headquarters. So I entrusted the role of CEO to Andrew and devoted myself to work overseas as COO. In the first place, this company was something the two of us started together. We always made decisions as a pair and apologized together when we made mistakes. I didn't care who was above the other. There should be a photo and short bio of me in the materials handed out when employees join, but Riley got hired through connections, so she probably never looked at that stuff. That's likely why she never realized until now. So Stella, want to have another discussion until this coffee runs out for old time's sake? Looks like there's an extra one. Daniel, put that in the fridge. It's fine. There's someone I want to call. That one's for them. As you said, looks like we'll be here a while today. I glanced at Riley. Her back was straight, but she refused to meet my eyes. I had Daniel call a certain person for me. A few minutes later, there was a knock and the door opened. You wanted to see me? A man poked his head in. The man looked at Riley sitting on the sofa with a slightly surprised expression. Riley also seemed startled to see him. This must be John. Realizing his daughter has some issues, he began to break out in a cold sweat. Are you John, the business unit director? I'm Stella, the COO. Please, have a seat. Stella, I heard you were returning from overseas. It's an honor to meet you. What brings you here today? As soon as John took his seat, I explained Riley's words and actions that day to everyone present. When I finished speaking, "How dare you be so rude to Stella?" Daniel openly expressed his anger. "I am truly sorry." John apologized profusely, his head nearly touching the table. Riley kept her head down, now regretting her actions. "Well, never mind the rudeness to me. More importantly, Riley, you must be thirsty. Please, have some coffee." At my words, "I'm sorry, I can't accept this," Riley looked at me with teary eyes. "Well, as Stella said, it's fine this time since it was her. But what if it had been a client? What were you thinking?" Andrew shot Riley a sharp look. She was at a loss for words. Well, this should never happen within the company. Manners are supposed to be taught during training. Who was in charge of that?" When Daniel said this, Riley's eyes widened. Realizing she couldn't make excuses, Riley named the person in charge. Andrew went to his computer to check the employee data, but there was no current employee by that name. After a moment of awkward silence, Daniel spoke as if remembering something. "Could that be the person who submitted their resignation along with that memo? You know, the one that said, 'I've reached my limit and please forgive me.'" It seemed the saleswoman's story wasn't just a rumor after all. Sweat poured from Riley and John, proof of their guilt. "John, do you have any involvement in this?" "Well, I wouldn't say no involvement," he replied uncomfortably. Andrew spoke in a low voice from his computer. "Is it really so difficult to answer Stella's question with a simple yes or no? As the business unit director, please strive to speak and act responsibly, and not give vague replies." Andrew carries himself with dignity during important discussions like this. I've long thought this side of him is well suited to lead everyone as our representative. "Stella, I'm so sorry about today. I didn't know." Riley apologized to me rapidly, perhaps finally understanding her position, or maybe trying to resolve things before John could speak. "Honestly, I thought if you're going to apologize, you shouldn't have done it in the first place." However, seeing that John still wasn't scolding Riley, I was convinced she was still being spoiled even now. Well, if many people are troubled by her usual attitude, she won't be able to stay with the company. But why don't we decide John's punishment based on the results of the investigation? Andrew and Daniel nodded at my suggestion. For the time being, we had Riley and John leave the room that day. On his way out, "Wait, me too?" John mumbled under his breath, but no one answered him. I chatted and laughed with Andrew and the others that day, reminiscing and discussing my work overseas. They showed me to my new desk. My desk was in a private office, as spacious as the president's office. Thrilled that our company had grown so much, and excited to have the private workspace I'd dreamed of, I went home that day. 2 weeks later, I officially reported to headquarters and introduced myself to the employees. Some of the employees near the store that day seemed to recognize me and looked surprised. I contacted the employee driven to quit by Riley and John. The company apologized and arranged for them to return to work. Though we were the ones who should be apologizing, the employee thanked me. The internal investigation results for Riley and John were quite bad. As rumored, Riley had pushed her work mistakes onto others and used John's authority to prevent superiors from complaining. John frequently harassed female employees, abusing his position. Upon hearing the results, I immediately summoned them to my office. Riley followed behind John, refusing to meet my eyes. I was astounded her pride still won out after all this, but I was too busy to dwell on it for long. Stella, I apologize for the other day. Riley seems to be reflecting too, so. John made excuses, but I ignored them all. John, you pulled strings for Riley's hiring, correct? I reviewed the interview records from the past few years. There were none for Riley. Surprised I had investigated that far, John pulled a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe away the sweat dripping down his face. He was likely panicking now that it came to light he had nepotistically hired a family member. Moreover, your internal evaluations are quite poor. This cannot continue. Please, anything but firing me. I'm fine with Riley being fired. John blurted out in a panic. Even Riley seemed shocked by his words. No, I won't fire you. But would you two be open to transfers? John quickly nodded in agreement. However, you two can't go to the same place. I'll notify you of the transfer locations later. Can you wait until then? Riley made a slightly disgusted face, but said nothing. Riley, you can speak Spanish, right? Well, you'll have to learn it there regardless. At my words, Riley's expression filled with dread. I can't. She mumbled, head still bowed. Very well. I have a meeting, so we'll leave it here for today. John left first with a deep bow. Riley followed after him. She tried to leave silently, shoulders slumped dejectedly. Riley, I hate to say this, but it's not okay to leave without a word, right? You taught me that yourself. At my comment, Riley left, her face pale. Later, John was given a transfer notice to a rural branch office, effectively a demotion. However, rumor has it he couldn't stand this treatment and has begun job hunting. As for Riley, she was given an overseas transfer notice. But having lost John as her shield and realizing she could do nothing alone, she stopped coming to work without notice after that day. I never saw her face again. Our company's sales steadily grew after that. We apparently ranked in a magazine's list of companies people want to work for. Several months later, one morning I was hurrying to work for an important client meeting. Near the office entrance, I spotted Andrew. He noticed me too and greeted me cheerfully. Morning. I bought coffee for you too, Stella. Thanks. This coffee? Guessing today will be a long one. I laughed, looking at the coffee in my hand. Andrew laughed too, but his expression turned serious. So, are you free after work today? His usual dignified demeanor was replaced by a lack of confidence. I sighed, looking at him like that, and chuckled. Andrew, it's no exaggeration to say today's deal will make or break the company's future. Please, remain my colleague until it's done. Dinner plans can wait until after. Hearing that, Andrew lightly cleared his throat and straightened his back. You're right, absolutely right. Well then, let's prepare. As I entered the company with him, I spotted Daniel smiling at us in the entrance. He must find it amusing to see Andrew flustered and red-faced beside me, greeting employees awkwardly as he walks. A lot happened right after I returned, but I look forward to my life here going forward.